Welcome to Empowering the Educator Within, the podcast where we explore real stories and practical strategies that help shape better teaching and learning. I'm your host, Christina Shala, and in today's episode, we're looking at how a symbolic idea, an umbrella meant to represent the role of language in education, was transformed into a fully developed framework that reshaped planning, collaboration, and curriculum design across an international school. The story takes us to the Netherlands Intercommunity School, or NIS, an international school following the International Primary Curriculum, also known as the IPC. It's where a new leadership vision sparked the development of a language framework designed to connect every subject to language learning in meaningful, practical ways. It's a journey that began with a sketch on a whiteboard and led to a structure that not only unified subjects, teachers, and support teams, but had a visible impact on student learning. It all began during my time at NIS. Partway through my teaching there, a new principal came on board with a vision for integrating language across all subject areas. With my background in language education, I was offered the position of language coordinator, an exciting opportunity that aligned closely with my passion and experience. During one of our first conversations, she pointed to a hand-drawn diagram on her whiteboard, a large umbrella with different subject areas dripping down from it like raindrops. This was meant to represent her vision, language as the overarching element connecting all disciplines. But as I looked at it, I realized the diagram didn't quite capture the depth of what she was aiming for. It was symbolic, yes, but it wasn't a plan. It didn't explain how teachers were supposed to make those connections, or how language would truly anchor the learning across the school. To bring that vision to life, something more was needed. We needed a structure, a framework that would allow the idea to move from concept to classroom. Something teachers could actually use to plan, collaborate, and teach in a way that made language central to every subject. So I reimagined the umbrella. Rather than subjects falling away like raindrops, I saw them as part of the umbrella's very fabric, each one supported and held together by language, positioned at the knob on top. That revised image became the foundation for the language framework I went on to develop, one rooted in the real, day-to-day work of teaching and learning. Before I could build the framework, I needed to fully understand the academic landscape at NIS. The school operated with a blend of the Dutch national curriculum, the Cambridge curriculum, and of course, the International Primary Curriculum, the IPC. Each came with its own structure and priorities. To connect them meaningfully, I immersed myself in a full-scale investigation. Because I didn't read Dutch, I relied heavily on interviews with the Dutch stream teachers. I needed to grasp not just what they taught, but how they taught it, and how their resources supported that instruction. I followed the same process with the English stream teachers, becoming more familiar with the Cambridge curriculum and how IPC units were embedded into classroom practice. Every conversation, every classroom observation helped me understand the strands of that umbrella more clearly, so that when the time came to build a framework, I knew what I was connecting and why. With a strong understanding of the curriculum structure in both streams, I began building the framework through a set of interconnected planners. The first type I developed was the mainstream planner. These were designed around the IPC routing system already mapped out by the coordinators, ensuring that across both Dutch and English streams, teachers would follow the same thematic units. Teachers were guided to begin their planning by identifying IPC subject learning goals, and then link those goals to corresponding language and math objectives from their stream's curriculum. Teachers were also required to list key vocabulary and grammar that would then be used to inform foreign language and EAL planning. Specialist subjects like PE and music were also included in the planning process. Their teachers contributed their own learning objectives, ensuring that these subjects, too, were integrated into the school's broader academic vision of placing language at the forefront. At the same time, I was overseeing the English as an Additional Language, or EAL department. When the EAL coordinator first arrived, she asked a question that stayed with me. Where is the curriculum my team is supposed to support? That moment reinforced the importance of visibility and access. So I structured the EAL planners to follow directly from the mainstream ones. Since mainstream teachers were now required to list key vocabulary and grammar for each unit, the EAL team could use that as a foundation to plan lessons and prepare materials in advance. The planners also included CFR objectives, allowing EAL teachers to align their instruction with recognized language development targets. Next came the planners for the Modern Foreign Language Department. These were designed with the same philosophy in mind, using key vocabulary and grammar from the mainstream classes as a jumping-off point. We aligned our curriculum objectives with the CFR and adapted each IPC unit to meet students at their respective language levels, beginner, intermediate, or advanced. Just before I left NIS, I also developed a set of planners for mother tongue maintenance. These were designed to support students whose academic Dutch was weaker, often because they had never lived in the Netherlands. But they also held value for students in the English stream who were no longer receiving EAL support. The idea was to begin every lesson with key vocabulary and grammar, giving all students a chance to engage with the content before diving deeper. Of course, no framework can thrive without the right structure behind it. For the language framework to work, we needed to build time into the schedule for planning and collaboration. That meant team planning sessions for each milepost level, regular meetings for the EAL and MFL teams, and shared time slots across streams so teachers could co-teach entry and exit points for each IPC unit. We were lucky enough to make it happen, and the impact was immediate. Mainstream teachers in both the Dutch and English streams were required to complete their unit planners 2 weeks in advance. This wasn't just a logistical preference. It was a necessary part of making the system function. Those early submissions gave the EAL and MFL departments the time they needed to review the upcoming units, identify relevant learning goals, and prepare materials that supported and aligned with the classroom content. Teachers quickly began using the planners consistently. The mainstream planners always came first, laying the foundation. Then the EAL, MFL, and specialist teams built on that foundation, using the same vocabulary, the same concepts, and the same unit goals, just from their own subject lens. This created a strong sense of cohesion across departments and ensured students were encountering and using language in a variety of meaningful contexts. For the first time, I had a bird's-eye view of every language program running in the school. I could see how one teacher's work flowed into another's, how planners aligned, and how subject areas began to speak the same academic language. That level of visibility was invaluable, not only for the framework itself, but also for the mentorship I was able to provide. It allowed me to support teachers in a meaningful and intentional way, helping them make even stronger connections between language and learning. The framework began to change how teachers worked and how students learned. Because Dutch and English stream teachers were planning together, they began aligning their objectives more naturally. Sometimes they even co-taught lessons in both languages. Students were exposed to terminology in English and Dutch within the same unit, and their language skills improved noticeably. This dual language approach extended into our MFL classrooms as well, reinforcing the connection students were already making. EAL students, meanwhile, were more engaged than ever. Their teachers could anticipate classroom content, prepare tailored materials, and help students access the curriculum in real time. Even in subjects like PE and music, where EAL teachers didn't attend the classes, students arrived more prepared because the support team knew what was coming. The MFL program also became more responsive. We were no longer operating in isolation. Each of our languages, English, Dutch, and Bahasa Indonesia, moved in sync with the IPC units and adapted to student needs. I remember one day when a Dutch teacher came into my English class, intending to pull out a few students for unfinished work. But after observing the lesson, he realized that everything we were doing directly complemented his unit, just in English. He left the students where they were. The connection was obvious and valuable. Even our youngest students could articulate these links. When an observer asked a primary 1 student why she was learning holiday words in Dutch, the student responded, "Because that's what we're learning in English in IPC." That one moment said it all. Before I left NIS, we had also begun linking the library curriculum to IPC units. I had worked closely with our librarian to build a planner that could make library time more relevant to what students were learning in class. There was also still more to be done in general, especially with further developing the specialist planners, but the foundation of the framework was strong. And that's the key takeaway. A framework like this isn't meant to be static. It needs to evolve with the school. Every year, I would have revisited the planners to account for new needs, combined classes, shifting student levels, and changing curricular priorities. I would have added more prompts, like reminding teachers to incorporate the IPC's personal learning goals into their planning. Because the goal is never to complete the planner, it's to use it as a tool for reflection, growth, and better teaching. In the end, the language framework became more than just a set of documents. It became the school's heartbeat. It aligned our curriculum, strengthened teacher collaboration, and gave students a deeper, more coherent learning experience. If you'd like to see the visuals and diagrams that accompany this framework, or explore more ideas on school-wide language planning, head over to shalabooks.com and visit the education blog. And if you found today's episode helpful, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a colleague. Until next time, keep empowering the educator within.